The galaxy believed it was safe. For centuries, alliances had been forged, trade routes stretched across stars, and wars seemed like relics of a darker past. On the surface, peace looked unshakable. Civilizations thrived, councils debated endlessly, and no empire dared challenge the fragile balance of power. But then it began. At first, the news came quietly. A patrol fleet in the Orion Arm had gone missing. 50 warships gone without a trace. No distress call, no black box recorders. No debris fields left floating among the stars. The fleet had simply vanished into silence. Many thought it was a mistake, perhaps a hyperlane collapse or a hidden star anomaly. The galaxy had seen such things before, but when the second fleet disappeared, larger, stronger, and better armed, the whispers began. The whispers had only one name: Deathworlders. The name carried weight. It was not a word used in council halls or polite company. It was spoken in hushed tones in private chambers, or at drinking tables far from the ears of the powerful. Because Deathworlders were not just humans, they were a legend, a warning, a nightmare etched into galactic history. Centuries ago, humans had fought wars so violent, so merciless, that entire empires vanished in days. Their homeworld, Earth, was a death world, a planet so hostile that only the strongest and most adaptive creatures survived. Out of that crucible, humanity was forged, and the galaxy never forgot. But humanity had changed. At least that was the story everyone chose to believe. After the old wars, humans withdrew from galactic politics. They traded, yes. They shared knowledge, yes. But they never again marched to war. They kept their fleets hidden. They attended council meetings with polite smiles, promising peace and neutrality, and the galaxy had grown comfortable with that silence. Now silence had returned, but it was not the same. On the mining world of Zathor, workers huddled in their mess hall as rumors spread faster than the news feeds could confirm them. Whole fleets gone. Some swore they had seen strange shadows moving between stars. Others claimed they had intercepted human transmissions, encrypted beyond comprehension. "They're moving again," one miner whispered, his hands shaking. "Who?" another asked, though they all knew the answer. "The Deathworlders, the humans." They said they were done with war. But what if they lied? The mess hall fell into silence. No one dared speak further. Across dozens of worlds, the same fear spread. Rumors turned into panic. Small empires doubled their border patrols. Merchant convoys rerouted around human space, refusing to risk the shortest trade lanes. Civilian transports carried refugees who wanted nothing more than to put light years between themselves and Earth. The galaxy trembled, not because of what had happened, but because of what might come. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. Its great chamber stretched across half a kilometer, filled with banners of 100 races. Every seat was occupied. Some leaders arrived in person, others projected their images as holograms, their voices echoing across the chamber. At the center, the council speaker, an elder of the Sarathi Dominion, slammed his staff against the floor. "This session is called," his voice boomed. "We face a threat to our stability. Fleets are vanishing on the Orion Arm. Reports grow of human involvement. We must act before fear becomes chaos." The chamber erupted in argument. They swore never to raise arms again. One ambassador shouted, "Do you trust their word? They are Deathworlders. Violence is in their blood." Another snarled, "They have been peaceful for centuries. Why would they strike now?" "Because they can." Back and forth the leaders argued, voices rising to chaos. Smaller races begged for protection, larger empires demanded action, and through it all, the same name repeated like a curse: humans. The council chambers dimmed as ancient records were projected in the air. Flickering images from the old wars came to life, human fleets tearing through enemy lines, planets burning, colonies silenced in hours. No one knew how many had truly died, because the numbers had been erased. Some called it exaggeration. Others swore the images were real. But no one could deny one thing: when humans fought, they did not fight to wound. They fought to end. An ambassador from the Vayari alliance leaned forward. His scales shimmered under the chamber lights. "If they are moving again," he hissed, "then no empire is safe. Do not fool yourselves. The Deathworlders are not conquerors. They are executioners. They do not start wars. They end them." A cold silence followed. On the core world of Halveth Prime, news feeds showed the council debates live. Citizens filled the streets, watching in horror as their leaders argued about humanity's silence. Markets collapsed overnight. Panic buying spread through colonies. Merchant fleets refused contracts to human space, no matter the profit. In dark corners of the city, young officers whispered about the rumors. Humans were massing fleets in hidden systems. War machines older than the council itself were awakening. Some said entire planets had gone dark under human banners, their populations relocated or destroyed. None of it was confirmed, but none of it needed to be. The fear alone was enough. For centuries, Earth had sent representatives to council meetings. Humans had spoken little, but they had always been present. Now, for the first time in living memory, their seats were empty. No envoys, no messages, no transmissions. It was as if humanity had simply turned its back on the galaxy. The council sent requests. No replies came. They dispatched envoys. None returned. Orbital stations above Earth broadcast only static silence, and that silence screamed louder than any threat. The council's failure to decide united nothing. It only made matters worse. The Zelthari Empire, proud and arrogant, declared humans must be confronted immediately. Their fleets began to mobilize, weapons glowing in orbit. The Ural Coalition argued the opposite: avoid provocation, seek peace, and wait. But their smaller allies accused them of cowardice. Dozens of minor empires begged for guidance, their voices drowned beneath the shouting of giants. For every leader calling for caution, another demanded war. And while they argued, the humans said nothing. In the quiet corridors outside the council hall, smaller races exchanged frightened words. "They will destroy us all." They only waited this long to make us weak. Maybe they are not moving at all. Maybe something worse controls them. The whispers traveled faster than light. From the council hall to the outer colonies, from refugee transports to military bunkers, the same words spread. The Deathworlders have stopped being nice, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy remembered fear. As the council dissolved in chaos, an encrypted transmission flickered into existence on hidden channels. It bore no symbols, no sender's mark, only a human voice, grim, cold, final: "Do not follow us." Then silence returned. The chamber froze. The council leaders stared at the broken transmission, their minds racing. Why were humans moving in? The shadows. Why leave such a warning? And most terrifying of all, if this was only the beginning, what came next? The council chamber was in chaos. The great dome of the galactic hall echoed with the overlapping voices of hundreds of representatives, each one speaking over the other, each one trying to drown out their own fear with anger. The vast banners of the empires that hung from the ceiling seemed to tremble in the air, currents created by so many beings shifting, pacing, and shouting. It was supposed to be a place of reason, a chamber where law and diplomacy ruled. Now it sounded more like a battlefield. The Speaker of the Council struck the floor with his staff, again and again, his deep voice demanding order. "Enough! This is not a market square. This is the Council of Civilizations." But his authority, once unshakable, now felt thin against the storm that raged before him. The chamber had never been this divided, not even during the great famines of the core worlds or the collapse of the Kelran Dominion. Fear had stripped away every mask of civility, At the center, an envoy of the Zelthari Empire stood, tall and glittering in ceremonial armor. His crest flared with indignation as he pointed one claw toward the empty seats reserved for humanity. This proves their guilt. They refuse to appear before us, they hide in silence, and our fleets vanish near their borders. What more evidence do you need? The Deathworlders are preparing for war. If we wait, we die. We must strike first. A chorus of voices rose in agreement, but just as many rose in opposition. The Ural Coalition's ambassador, a being of translucent skin and calm eyes, raised his long hands in protest. Strike first? Against humanity? Do you even hear yourself? The Deathworlders were the architects of the last great wars. When they fought, entire civilizations burned in days. You would have us provoke them? You would have us awaken their wrath? The Zelthari envoy sneered. Better to die fighting than to kneel in fear. Better to live, the Ural countered, his voice low but firm, than to start a fire that will consume us all. The speaker once again demanded silence, but the debate had already split the chamber. Small powers huddled together, whispering anxiously to their neighbors. They were caught between giants. If war came, they would be the first to burn. Yet they had no strength to influence the decision. Their survival depended on guessing which side would win and hoping they chose correctly. Amid the shouting, a voice suddenly cut through the noise. It belonged to the ambassador of the Vayari Alliance, one of the oldest races still seated on the council. His scales glistened darkly, and his many eyes narrowed. You speak as though humanity is a puzzle to solve. They are not. They are a blade. A blade does not explain itself. A blade does not offer warning. A blade cuts. And if the Deathworlders are moving again, then it means only one thing. Someone has already been judged. A ripple of unease moved through the chamber. No one dared challenge his words. The speaker leaned heavily on his staff. He looked tired, far older than the years his species normally showed. We cannot survive this if we are divided. The rumors grow faster than the truth. Already minor colonies riot. Already fleets refuse to enter human space. If we do nothing, the galaxy will fall into panic without a single shot fired. We must act as one. And so the question was put forward. The council had to choose. Confront the humans directly or wait and hope that silence did not turn into fire. The vote tore through the chamber like lightning. The Zelthari and their allies voted for confrontation, their voices sharp with arrogance and fear. The Ural and several protectorates voted for patience, though their voices trembled with doubt. The smaller races begged for neutrality, terrified of choosing wrong. When the count was complete, no side had gained a majority. The chamber buzzed with tension. It was as if the galaxy itself held its breath. Then the speaker made his gamble. If humanity will not come to us, then we shall go to them. We will send observers to Earth. They will look upon the humans with their own eyes, and they will return with answers. Until then, no fleet will cross into human territory. To do so without sanction is to defy the council itself. The decision echoed through the chamber. Some cheered, some cursed, but all accepted. For now, beyond the chamber walls, the news spread in an instant. On every world connected to the council, broadcasts flashed the same headline: Observers to Earth. Citizens clung to the words as if they were a shield against fear. Surely if humanity had nothing to hide, the observers would return with peace. But in the darker corners of the galaxy, the words meant something else. If the observers never returned, it would mean only one thing: the Deathworlders had spoken in silence. As the observers prepared for their journey, whispers grew louder. Some said the humans had already begun moving fleets in hidden systems. Others claimed they had built weapons older than the council itself, weapons that could erase entire star clusters in a single strike. In the end, it did not matter which rumor was true. What mattered was the silence, and the silence came only from one place: Earth. The observers left with heavy hearts. They knew what awaited them might not be answers, but an ending. And above the council chambers, as the banners swayed in artificial breezes, one fact lingered unspoken in every mind. If the Deathworlders had truly stopped holding back, then no decision, no vote, and no alliance would save them. The observers' journey to Earth was meant to calm the galaxy. That was the story the Council told the frightened crowds. That was the message broadcast across worlds where riots broke out in the streets and traders refused to set course anywhere near human space. The Council promised answers, promised that the truth would restore order. But in the quiet of their transport vessel, the observers themselves did not believe those words. The crew spoke little during the long passage. Every one of them knew the stories of fleets that had gone missing near the Orion Arm, of colonies left silent, of ancient wars where humans had erased entire civilizations in weeks. Now they were flying straight toward the very world everyone feared. The first signs of unease came as they approached Sul, the human home system. Normally, the journey should have been filled with chatter from beacons and civilian relays. Human. Space was famous for its network of communication nodes. Even in peacetime, their channels buzzed with life. Trade requests, research transmissions, even the strange music they broadcast freely into the void. But this time, there was nothing. Silence pressed in on them. No greetings, no warnings, no signals. It was as though the system had been abandoned. As the observers entered the Sol system, the first sight that met their eyes was Earth itself, blue and green against the black of space, beautiful, alive, and yet something was wrong. Above the planet, massive shapes hung in orbit. Dozens, maybe hundreds of ships, each one larger than anything the observers had ever seen. Warships. Some gleamed with fresh metal, others looked ancient, their hulls scarred from battles fought before most. Civilizations had even reached the stars. They floated silently, weapons cold but ready, no signals, no lights. Just the silent vigil of giants. The observer's pilot whispered what no one wanted to say aloud. This looks like a graveyard. Their transport crept forward, every sensor strained to catch the smallest response. Still, no message came. Earth did not acknowledge them. When they descended toward orbit, the silence grew heavier. Cities lay below, vast stretches of steel and glass, but none of them glowed with life. No moving ships in the skies, no transports rising from launch pads. Entire metropolises lay in darkness, as if abandoned. Yet scanners detected power surging through every building. The cities were not dead. They were waiting. The observers landed on a platform that should have been bustling with workers, security, and diplomats. It was empty. Wind howled across the landing pads. Doors that should have opened to welcome them stayed shut. One of the observers, a young envoy from a minor colony, nearly broke. His voice shook. "They knew we were coming. They let us land. But why is no one here?" The leader of the group, a veteran envoy of the Vayari Alliance, tried to stay calm, though his scales trembled with unease. This is their message. Silence is their message. Cautiously they advanced into the silent corridors of the station. Lights flickered on as they moved, as though unseen eyes watched their every step. The place was not abandoned. It was alive, aware, and waiting for them to move deeper. At last, in the heart of the station, they found something. A single chamber, empty except for a pedestal. On it rested a device, simple in shape, glowing faintly with human script. None of the observers could read it, but their translators picked up the message as it pulsed once, twice, and then spoke in a human voice. "Do not follow us." That was all. No greeting, no warning beyond those words, no explanation. The device shut down, its light dying. The chamber was silent once again. The observers exchanged terrified glances. Some whispered that this was not a warning but a threat. Others believed it was a plea. None could agree on what the humans truly meant. When they returned to their vessel, the massive warship still hung in the skies, watching but unmoving. No engines burned, no weapons turned. But every observer felt the same chill in their bones. Those ships could have destroyed them at any moment. The fact that they were allowed to leave was the only mercy humanity chose to give. As their vessel lifted off and pulled away from Earth, the silence remained unbroken. No pursuit, no message, nothing but the echo of the single phrase that now burned in their minds: "Do not follow us." When the observers finally returned to Council space, their report only deepened the galaxy's fear. Fleets vanishing, human silence, empty cities filled with unseen power, and warships larger than anything anyone had ever imagined. The Council had wanted answers. Instead, they received a warning that chilled every species to the core. The galaxy now knew two things for certain. The Deathworlders were awake, and they did not want to be followed. The Council's chamber had never been so quiet. Not even during the collapse of the Kelran Dominion, not even during the famine riots of the core worlds. This silence was different, heavy, thick. The observers' report still hung in the air like a blade pressed against every throat. They had gone to Earth seeking answers. They had returned with silence, empty skies, and a single message that made the blood of every ambassador run cold. Do not follow us. Some said it was a threat. Others swore it was a warning. None could agree. What they did agree on was this: humanity was moving again. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy turned its eyes to the old archives. Records buried beneath layers of censorship and locked behind walls of secrecy were forced into the open. Civilizations wanted to know what had truly happened the last time the Deathworlders had gone to war. At first, the records were fragments, blurry images, broken transmissions, half-erased data. A fleet here and then silence. A colony thriving and then gone. A star system once filled with light, then nothing but black void. Whole branches of history cut away like someone had taken a blade to time itself. The younger civilizations demanded more. They deserved to know what their ancestors had hidden, and so, reluctantly, the elders obeyed. In the great halls of the Council, ancient files were unlocked. Holograms filled the chamber, flickering with scenes no one had seen in generations. The first image was of a human ship. Not one of the silent giants that now hung above Earth, but smaller, older, yet still terrifying. Its hull bristled with weapons, its shields burned against a storm of enemy fire, and when it retaliated, entire fleets broke apart in seconds. The ambassadors watched in stunned silence as battle after battle played out before them. Humanity had not fought like other species. They had not worn down their enemies with slow campaigns or bled them over decades. When they struck to end. One recording showed a human fleet of only 20 ships facing an armada of nearly 200. The battle lasted 12 minutes. At the end, only the human fleet remained. Another file revealed something even worse. Not battles in space, but on the ground. Human soldiers moving through shattered cities, their weapons cut through armor, through fortifications, through anything that stood in their way. They advanced without hesitation, without fear, without mercy. The recordings ended before the aftermath could be seen. Perhaps it was mercy. Perhaps it was censorship. The ambassadors stared at the holograms, and a new question began to form. Why had so much been erased? Why had the old wars been buried under silence? The answer came from the Vayari ambassador, his voice as cold as the void. Because if the galaxy had remembered the truth, it would have lived in fear forever. The chamber trembled with unease. The younger races pressed for more. What had ended those wars? Why had humanity withdrawn? What had stopped the Deathworlders from finishing what they had started? But the records offered no answer. They ended abruptly. One moment humanity was destroying fleets, the next silence. No treaties, no surrender. Just a sudden decision to step back, to vanish from galactic conflict and bury the past. The Zelthari envoy rose, his voice shaking with fury. Do you see now? They left not out of kindness, but out of choice. They grew bored, and now they return. What empire will vanish? This time, who among us will be next? The chamber erupted again. Some ambassadors demanded immediate surrender to humanity, offering tribute in exchange for survival. Others shouted for preemptive strikes to destroy Earth before it could unleash another war. Most sat in fearful silence, unable to choose either path. And then, as the arguments reached their peak, a new report arrived, a fleet, massive, human. Emerging from uncharted space on the edge of the galaxy, they were not attacking, they were not speaking. They were just waiting. The image projected into the chamber showed hundreds of ships, some new, some ancient, gathered in perfect formation. Their weapons were dark, but their presence was louder than any threat. The councillors stared at the image, until the silence became unbearable. One question burned in every mind. If the humans were waiting, what were they waiting for? The ghosts of the old wars had returned, and the galaxy suddenly realized something chilling. The silence above Earth had not been the end of the message. It had only been the beginning. The first retaliation came without warning. No declaration, no transmission, no demand, just silence, followed by destruction. It began at the far edge of the Zelthari Empire. Their fleets had been massing there for weeks, the largest gathering of warships the Empire had ever deployed. Hundreds of cruisers, carriers and dreadnoughts sat in orbit, their engines burning bright, their weapons primed for battle. The Council had ordered restraint, but the Zelthari refused. They believed strength was the only language the Deathworlders respected. They never had the chance to use it. The fleet vanished in seconds. At first, Command believed it was a sensor failure. Ships don't just disappear. But the reports streamed in from surviving outposts. One moment the Armada was there, shields raised, weapons armed. The next, every ship blinked out of existence. Not destroyed, not scattered, simply erased. Only one transmission survived. A desperate voice crackling with static, cut short by an explosion. The words it carried froze the blood of everyone who... You heard it. They're here. One ship, just one. The message ended there. The Council convened in emergency again. The chamber was chaos, voices rising with fear and denial. How could a single vessel erase hundreds of warships? Some claimed it was impossible. Others swore this was exactly what the old records had warned of. The Deathworlders had weapons the galaxy could not comprehend. For the first time, even the Zelthari envoy had no words. His crest, usually flared with arrogance, lay flat against his head. His people's pride had been shattered in an instant, but the retaliation did not end there. One by one, reports streamed in from across the Orion Arm. Patrols vanished. Colonies fell silent. Entire convoys disappeared from trade lanes. The same pattern repeated every time. No warning, no survivors, only silence. And always, witnesses spoke of a single ship. It did not look like the warships the observers had seen. Above Earth, this vessel was something older, something darker. It moved faster than sensors could track, struck harder than shields could endure, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Some swore its hull was scarred from battles fought millennia ago. Others whispered it wasn't a ship at all, but a ghost from the old wars, awakened to hunt again. The Council demanded answers. Why were the Deathworlders striking now? What had triggered their fury? No one knew. The humans remained silent. They sent no envoys, no demands. They simply erased those who stood against them, and as the galaxy trembled, a new fear took root. If this was only the first retaliation, what would the second look like? The Veari ambassador spoke the words no one wanted to hear. His many eyes. glowed dimly in the chamber's light as he hissed, "This is not conquest. This is not war. This is judgment." The chamber fell silent, because deep down, every civilization remembered the truth. The Deathworlders had not stopped being nice. They had stopped holding back. The patterns began to emerge slowly, like shadows, spreading across a star map. At first, the Council thought the attacks were random, fleets disappearing here, colonies erased there. But as the days turned into weeks, a grim truth revealed itself. The Deathworlders were not striking at random. They were following a design. The galaxy's best minds pored over the data. Every system struck had one thing in common. It had once supplied arms, soldiers, or ships in the wars against humanity centuries ago. The connections were undeniable. The Deathworlders had not forgotten. They had kept records, and now, one by one, they were erasing the names on that ancient list. It was extermination by memory. The Zelthari Empire lost another dozen fleets, each wiped clean from existence. The Veari colonies on the fringe burned silently. Their cities turned to glass without a single warning shot. Even the mighty Kraith war clans, once proud hunters of human worlds, vanished into silence when their war citadels were engulfed in white fire. Each strike was precise, each strike was final, and always the single ship appeared. Its silhouette grew more familiar with each sighting, angular, brutal, carrying the scars of battles fought long before most civilizations had even discovered faster-than-light travel. Witnesses described it moving like a predator through the void, never rushing, never hesitating, as though every target had already been chosen long ago. The Council tried to rally unity. They called for peace envoys, for emissaries, for desperate. Messages of surrender, none returned. No Deathworlder answered. No plea was acknowledged, because this was not a war of negotiation. This was extinction, patterned and deliberate. In the hushed corridors of the council chambers, ambassadors whispered in terror. If the Deathworlders were crossing names off an old list, then whose name was next? Every race began scanning their history, searching for evidence of ancient crimes against Earth. Old archives were torn open, records scrubbed of guilt. But it was too late. The humans already knew. The stories spread across the stars like wildfire. Children of distant colonies woke screaming from dreams of fire. Soldiers refused orders, abandoning their posts before the Deathworlder ship arrived. Whole planets began evacuating, their skies choked with fleeing transports, though none could say if running would save them. And then came the greatest revelation. A group of council analysts uncovered a chilling rhythm in the attacks. The timing, the positioning, the silence. It was not just revenge, it was a sequence. A message written in destruction. The ship was not only targeting enemies, it was encircling something. The pattern of extinction was shaping the map itself, but shaping it into what? Some swore it was a warning. Others whispered it was a cage. And as the council stared at the star map, watching the circle tighten, they realized with horror where the pattern was leading. It was pointing inward, toward the heart of the galaxy, toward them. And if the Deathworlders truly meant to close the circle, then soon, very soon, every civilization would learn the final truth. The first retaliations were only the beginning. The real extinction had not even started. The reckoning did not arrive with fleets, it arrived with silence. Whole sectors went dark in a single night. Trade beacons that had pulsed for centuries fell silent. Outposts that had survived wars, famines, and plagues simply vanished from the network. The Council's maps filled with black gaps, each one marking a civilization erased from existence. The pattern was complete now. The circle the Deathworlders had carved across the stars closed like a noose, and at its center lay the Council's own worlds. The ambassadors met in a chamber colder than ice. Their voices no longer roared with argument. They whispered, afraid the sound itself might draw the predator's eye. Every species could feel it in their bones. The reckoning had returned. The same reckoning their ancestors had spoken of. The same fury that had ended wars long before the Council even existed. But this time, it was worse, because the Deathworlders were not fighting to win. They were fighting to erase. The Council attempted one last gamble. A coalition fleet of every major power gathered at the rim of Council space. Thousands of ships, the most formidable armada ever assembled. It stretched from moon to moon, a shield of steel and fire. They told themselves this time would be different. This time numbers would matter. But when the Deathworlder ship came, it was alone. Just one vessel, black against the stars, scarred by ages, yet undiminished. It moved slowly, deliberately, as if daring the galaxy's strongest to stop it. The Armada opened fire with everything they had. Beams lit the void, missiles tore through space, and gravity weapons bent the stars themselves. And then, silence. Every weapon died, every reactor failed. Entire fleets hung helpless, powerless, as though the void itself had betrayed them. In that frozen moment, the Deathworlder ship spoke for the first time. A single transmission carried across every channel, every frequency, every mind. We warned you once. You did not listen. The voice was human, cold, ancient. And then the Armada burned one strike, white fire that consumed thousands of ships at once, leaving nothing but drifting husks. Entire civilizations watched their greatest defenders fall. Like dust, the galaxy had gambled everything and lost. The reckoning had returned, and now nothing would stop it. The end began with a whisper. Not the roar of fleets, not the thunder of weapons. Just a single transmission that cut across every frequency in the galaxy. It was the humans. For the first time in centuries, their voice carried across the stars. No envoy appeared, no delegation arrived, no ship docked at the Council stations. Only the Deathworlder vessel, black and scarred, drifting silently above the ruins of the greatest armada ever assembled. The voice was calm, steady, cold. You remembered us as monsters. You called us Deathworlders, and still, you dared to test how far our patience could reach. We gave you peace, we gave you mercy, we gave you time, and you repaid it with arrogance, with chains, with fire. Across the galaxy, beings of 1,000 species listened in silence. Worlds trembled, children clutched their elders, commanders turned pale as the words continued. We asked for nothing but distance. We warned you once, long ago, never to push us again. You believed we had grown weak, that we had forgotten, that mercy meant fear. Now you see the truth. The stars themselves seemed to dim as the Deathworlder ship powered its ancient engines, the glow of its weapons casting shadows across shattered fleets. This is not conquest. This is not war. This is remembrance. Every name erased today is a name that once raised a weapon against us. We do not forget. And when you write your histories, if any survive, remember this. Mercy was your chance. Mercy was your shield. Mercy was our gift, and mercy is gone. The transmission ended. For a long time, the galaxy held its breath. No one spoke. No one moved. Then the ship vanished into the void, leaving only wreckage and silence. Some swore the message was final, that the Deathworlders would return to their world and leave the galaxy to its ruins. Others whispered that the voice had been only the beginning, that more ships would awaken, each carrying the old fury of humanity. No one knew which was true. But one truth spread across every surviving world, etched into memory like fire across the stars. The day the Deathworlders stopped being nice was the day the galaxy learned the true meaning of fear, and fear would never leave them again.